Right. So today you had a terrorist attack at the Kabul International Airport. And again, I don't know how much I can go into detail because when I uploaded my segment earlier when I was on RT, when I was live on RT, you know the age restricted the video? Like you have to sign in, and I've been hearing you need a credit card or a passport now to sign in, which is, I mean, I don't know. So I'm going to try and this is how they stop you doing your job. So you had a terrorist attack and actually several explosions that went off in Kabul, ranging from 4 to 6. It's not clear, but I just want to show you a headline over here from The Guardian, okay, just as an example. And they say here that at least 60 Afghans and 13 U.S. soldiers dead after Kabul airport blasts. And if you are joining us from a time machine, you are coming into the future and you do not know what is happening. The U.S. is withdrawing from Afghanistan, maybe. I don't know. You might go 20 years into the future and they still might be there. But currently, they're supposedly withdrawing from Afghanistan. And, they've moved all of the evacuation procedures from the U.S. Embassy to Kabul International Airport to avoid a Saigon moment, right? So, which is, I mean, utterly absurd because it happened anyway, and they've made it all the more risky, as you can see. So tons of people have been trying to get out of the country, which apparently, they spent 20 years trying to build and have nothing to show for it, which is why everyone's trying to flee, right? It's so well done. Everyone wants to stay. No, everyone wants to flee. So you have very large crowds of people that have been gathering outside the airport. And unfortunately, very tragically, very sadly, someone blew themselves up. And actually, 2 people and a gunman. So 2 people blew themselves up and 1 gunman. That's what they're saying, right? So if I understood correctly, there was one next to one explosion near the Baron Hotel. This is a hotel next to the airport where British and American troops are staying, mainly British. And then another one was at one of the gates of the airport, the second explosion. Abbey Gate, I think. Yes, it was Abbey Gate. So at the Abbey Gate entrance to the airfield, okay? And as I said, the other one at the Baron Hotel. So those were the 2 explosions. And there are hundreds of wounded. 60 Afghans are dead, and the current total is 13 U.S. Marines are dead. And this is very tragic. One of my colleagues on RT was saying that the videos don't do it justice, and I can believe that. It's very tragic. It's very tragic. So I just want to go through what's happening because within an hour of this attack, okay, immediately on Politico, you had a report in Politico saying that, according to 2 sources, they said it was ISIS, and ISIS-K, actually, specifically, right? So let me show you this over here. So right, so they're saying that one unnamed U.S. official and one person familiar with the situation told Politico that it was ISIS. And then everyone ran with this. It was breaking news everywhere. Oh, according to Politico, it's ISIS. So again, you can take that with a grain of salt because given the last couple of years when it comes to, unnamed U.S. officials, where this has been featured a lot. Russiagate, of course, right? So, for example, just as an example, last year, barely a year ago in June 2020, what did we see in all of the mainstream media? They were saying that in Afghanistan, Iran and Russia had placed bounties on U.S. troops, right? So they were paying the Taliban to kill U.S. troops, allegedly. And who did they cite as evidence, as proof? Unnamed U.S. officials, whoever that is. Is it someone making coffee at the Pentagon? Is it the vice president? I have no idea. But it was all bullshit. It turned out to be completely made up, complete fantasy. And it was used successfully to prolong the war, which we'll get into a second. So I'm just telling you, take it with a grain of salt. But nonetheless, this is being reported by everyone now that it's ISIS, okay? And H.R. McMaster, who is, he's a lieutenant general, I think. So he's a 3-star general, and he was national security advisor under Trump. He's a typical military-industrial complex man, and a national security ghoul. So what does he do? He goes on CNN, right? And I want you to listen to what he told CNN. Pay very close attention. Okay, this is what he told CNN.
When you surrender, this is what we're facing. And this is what happens when you surrender to jihadist terrorists. And I think, Jim, what's important about this, you may hear this is ISIS-K or whatever, but these terrorist organizations exist in an ecosystem along the Afghanistan-Pakistan border and now all across Afghanistan, in which they share people and resources. You know, Suraj Haqqani is the military commander of the Taliban, and he's a central figure in al-Qaeda. This is a myth, right, that the Taliban is separate from al-Qaeda and these other groups. I would not be surprised in any way if ISIS-K was used, this attack, their Kabul attack network was used as a cutout for the Taliban, so they can humiliate us on the way out and still continue to play us, because I don't think they think we're serious people, Jim. I mean, so our weakness is encourage them to be emboldened, and of course they're going to have, as you mentioned, a safe haven support base, access to resources that will make them extraordinarily dangerous, as well has the ability now to say, hey, look, we're winning, right? We've established the Islamic Emirate in Khorasan. Come to our cause, much like ISIS did when they recruited 30,000 fighters at the drop of a hat, right? Once they took over territory the size of Britain in Iraq and in Syria. And then, of course, we had to go back, Jim. So now what I would just ask, what was it worth it, really? You know, what would be a better outcome? You know, a sustained commitment of a few thousand U.S. troops who are continuing to enable the Afghans to bear the brunt of this fight, or this catastrophe that we're seeing now, right? We had this end the endless wars narrative, Jim. But hey, guess what? You know, this is an endless jihad that the enemies of all civilized people are waging against us. And if we don't acknowledge that,
what on earth is he on about?
At an extraordinarily high risk.
And one lesson of recent years.
What does that even mean? This is an endless jihad. Well, maybe if you don't want that, maybe you should stop funding Al-Qaeda, no? And in your other favorite pet projects in Syria and so on. What do you say to that? No, so anyway, he basically said, and the quote is written above in this tweet, and I can read it to you, right? Again, so he said, quote, he would not be surprised if ISIS-K was used as a cutout for the Taliban so they could humiliate us on the way out. So he's accusing ISIS and the Taliban of working together, right? So of course you've heard of, first of all, it was Al-Qaeda, right? And then it was the Taliban, and then it was Al-Qaeda in Iraq and Al-Qaeda in Syria, and then Al-Nusra, and then you know, they had Daesh, they had ISIS, then now ISIS-K. You know, this is the thing with the war on terror. They need endless boogeymen, right? It's never ending. There's always a new enemy. You have the ISIS, ISIS-K, ISIS-L, ISIS-M. You know, they're going to keep going until Z and then start again with numbers. So, you know, it's never ending. There's always a new boogeyman. And weirdly enough, they're all known to the intelligence agencies beforehand. Now, just to back up a second, he's accusing ISIS of working with the Taliban. Do you know how fucking ridiculous this sounds? This is what drives me nuts. There are so many people who are talking about the Middle East. They don't know their fucking ass from their elbow. You know? Now, this guy, I would suspect he's just nefarious. But most people are really, they're just, you know, fucking ignorant. They don't know anything about the Middle East. This is why they swallow up the propaganda. ISIS and the Taliban are enemies. Okay? Just to give you an example, just the most recent thing. Last week, so 7 days ago, you know, the Taliban, they've taken over the country, right? So obviously that includes the prisons. They executed an ISIS commander. So can you explain to me why they're executing an ISIS commander and then they're working with ISIS? They don't like each other, okay? This is the same crap that they tried in 2002 and 2003. Do you remember in the lead up to the Iraq war? I remember. You know, they were going on TV and Donald Rumsfeld, how many times have I played this clip to you? You know, it's just one example, but he's saying that Saddam Hussein is working with Al-Qaeda. Yeah, okay, so a Ba'athist, a secular Ba'athist is working with Islamists who want to overthrow him. What the fuck does that even mean? Who buys this? I can tell you who buys this. People who drink the fucking Kool-Aid, that's who buys this, okay? Because they listen to this, they see this idiot over here with his RGB tie, as one of you mentioned, with his Christmas tie in the middle of August, and he's talking about Taliban and ISIS working together, and they swallow this up. Oh, look, there's nice lights. They have nice graphics. This looks very official. Oh, yes. Oh, Taliban, ISIS, yes, yes. Yeah, they can't even tell the difference between Hamas and fried chicken. They don't know anything. They think this is all the same thing. They just, all Muslims are the same, Arabs. They have no clue. They, you know, these are the... They don't even know that Iranians are Persians. They think they speak Arabic. Like, it's just so... The ignorance is just unbelievable. And unfortunately, when you create this kind of ignorance, then when people watch this, they just believe anything, right? Just like when they said Iran was working with Al-Qaeda as well. Pompeo was saying that Herschel, what? Iran is in Syria kicking Al-Qaeda's ass. Anyway, so this is complete bullshit that ISIS is working with Taliban. This is preposterous. Do you know what the aim of that is? Why he's saying that? It's the same reason why they said Saddam is working with Al-Qaeda, right? And again, Al-Qaeda and ISIS are not the same, but it's just an analogy. They're saying this because who is the enemy here? ISIS. And the bigger enemy, let us say, for the US at least, in their point of view. And so since ISIS carried out the attack, allegedly, they want to blame the Taliban as well. And why would they want to blame the Taliban and tie them to this attack? Well, for several reasons, right? Because that way you could criticize the withdrawal in general, under Biden, under Trump, just the fact that a deal was signed with these people. You could also maybe, continue the occupation, prolong the occupation. That's one possible outcome. You could also attack the Taliban, so not just continue occupying them, but engage in a new conflict. There's numerous possibilities. I don't really need to give you a history of CNN, and this guy over here. So this meathead, as I called him on Twitter, he was also saying in 2018 that Bashar al-Assad used chemical weapons, right? And he advocated for the bombing of Syria. When they said that Bashar al-Assad used chemical weapons in Douma, which is in the countryside, in the suburbs of Damascus, in the Ghouta region. There's lots of farms and stuff. So when that happened, the Syrian army had taken back Ghouta. They had won the battle. I've gone through this with you guys many times. Like, I know people try to talk about the OPCW, and of course that's important because of those leaked documents from WikiLeaks, but you have to understand this, like the geography, the battle that was taking place, what was happening, like why it makes no sense, right? The common sense. The Syrian army had just won a major battle. Why would they use chemical weapons the day that they won a battle to a surrendering enemy to allegedly kill like a dozen people? Who does that in their right mind? Why would Bashar al-Assad do the one thing to invite a NATO bombing? And nevertheless, this meathead was claiming that as well. And just like they were claiming Bashar al-Assad gassed people on the day that UN inspectors arrived, and just like they claimed that Saddam Hussein is working with Bin Laden with Al-Qaeda. I mean, this is just ridiculous. This is just absurd. But it doesn't matter that it's absurd. You know why? Because the goal here is to continue the wars, right? And start the wars. They started these wars on the most insane shit. I mean, when you come and you say Iraq has weapons of mass destruction, this is a lie. This is an accusation of astronomical proportions. How can you make something up like that? How can you say that? Did you know what kind of a charge that is? What kind of an accusation that is? And they still did it. They still fucking lied about it, and they still did the war. They did the war. And so one of those other lies, the other main lie, was not just weapons of mass destruction. It was that Saddam's working with Al-Qaeda. Okay? So my point here, just to give you context, is that these people are fucking liars. Not just this meathead over here from the military-industrial and national security complex, but also the networks. They bring morons like this on purpose because they know they're going to spew some bullshit, right? And another thing that you need to understand, and we looked at this last time, is that for the last week, they've been saying that, okay, I'm going to get into this afterwards because I want to continue with what happened today, but they've been saying that Afghanistan is becoming a jihadi stronghold again and everything. Meanwhile, they're ignoring Syria and Saudi Arabia. We'll get to that in a second. I just want to go through the events of today. So this meathead went on the news and said that, of course, right? And, I just very simply tried to outline this on Twitter, right? That the Taliban want foreign invaders out of their country as fast as possible. The last thing they're going to do is coordinate a terrorist attack with ISIS, as some meatheads on CNN are suggesting, potentially prolonging a NATO troop presence. Right? And, as Glenn Greenwald says here, the deep state ghouls on CNN, I love that expression, insinuating or even stating that the Taliban wanted this attack and may have even helped launch it, know that they're lying. They're desperate to find a way to keep U.S. troops in Afghanistan and keep the money spigot pouring. And, of course, some background here about McMaster, and his warmongering and all of this. And this is, of course, this is who these people are. This is who they are. And so, another thing that is very crazy is that they knew about this. They knew about this in advance. So This attack happened around 3 p.m. Central European summertime. So what is that? That's like 10 a.m. New York time, 10 a.m. Eastern. And the same day, so today, right? I'm talking like 18 hours ago, just a few hours before this attack at the airport. Britain, the US, Australia, I think France as well, they all warned that an attack was coming at the airport. Don't take my word for it, man. Just watch this video. They sent emails to all the people, to the nationals that they knew were there. Take a look at this video, okay?
With the clock ticking down to the August 31st withdrawal deadline, a new threat has emerged in Afghanistan, putting the entire evacuation process at risk. The United States, UK, and Australia have issued a flurry of near-identical warnings, urging people to clear from Kabul's airport immediately.
Do not travel to Hamid Karzai International Airport. And if you're in the area of the airport, move to a safe location and await further advice. There is an ongoing and very high threat of terrorist attack.
While no more details were provided on the security alert, NATO intelligence points towards a threat posed by longtime Taliban enemies, the Islamic State group. Taliban officials have since promised to provide security for the thousands of hopeful evacuees still gathered at the airport. But despite the danger, the group says Western forces should stick to their agreement and complete the evacuation by the month's end. For its part, the United States has remained firm on its commitment to getting people to safety.
This effort does not end on August 31st. It will continue for as long as it takes to help get people out of Afghanistan who wish to leave.
Several hundred US citizens now remain on Afghan soil, with close to 5,000 taken out of the country over the last 10 days.
Okay, so you saw that and you heard that, right? But just before, hold on, I'm just going to go back to the video so you can see the date on it because it's written underneath. Look,
With the clock ticking down to
August 26th, that's today. And you can see many articles about this. They were warning about an imminent threat. So the question here is that if they knew, not just one country, as you saw, Australia, the UK, Britain, the US, I get my empires mixed up. So they knew that this was happening, that this was coming. Why didn't they do anything? I mean, yes, they issued some warnings, but I'm talking about why didn't they do anything concretely? Maybe, set up further checkpoints, create, put up obstacles to prevent people from being able to cram together in close proximity. There are various methods that you can deploy, especially not just for as law enforcement, but the army especially. There are various methods. I mean, they've been occupying the country for 20 fucking years. I think they know how to deal with such situations. Why didn't they do anything, right? I mean, isn't that a reasonable question to ask? I think it's a very reasonable question to ask. Look what happened. 100 people wounded, 60 Afghans dead. So they knew something was coming. They didn't treat it properly. When you can't just send an email, be like, don't come here, and then that's it. No. You've taken control of the airport. The U.S. military is hijacked the airport. They have their tanks. I don't know how many tanks are there, but they have their Air Force there with the cargo planes. They have 82nd Airborne. They have Marines. So that there's an armed presence in the airport. So you would expect some sort of another response. I don't know, man. I just think this is a very reasonable, rational question to ask. Why didn't they take this threat more seriously? No? So Ray McGovern, right, the former CIA analyst we were talking about the other day, my episode that I did on Afghanistan for Press TV this week, I did it with Ray McGovern. Look at what he had to say, okay? He said, do today's bombings at Kabul airport have signs of a false flag attack? If prior intelligence was so accurate, and it was, why was attack not nipped in the bud? Key question, as always. Who profits from killing Americans at this point? Biden better ask it before he gets sucked back in. I think that's self-explanatory. So, I mean, there's either some gross incompetence going on, or there's something far more sinister going on here. Because, I mean, just rationally, reasonably, if you're in charge of these troops, I mean, someone would be fired for this. How can you know about this and then just treat it with such disregard? it cost lives. It cost lives today. So something, I mean, this is not okay. This is not okay. There's something is wrong here. And, you know, in the best case scenario, I think they were careless. No? I'm telling you, they were telling people 24 hours in advance before this thing happened that the airport is going to be attacked. They didn't say it's a attack is coming. No, they said the fucking airport. They specified the airport. So why did they let people cram together so much? I mean, this is not okay. This is incompetence and carelessness at best. No? So this is very suspect. And, you know, again, I just want to be clear on one thing. Even in the best case scenario, although that's not really something we can say given the situation, there is no best case scenario. I'm just saying, even if you give them the benefit of the doubt, that they did their best and so on, there's a big problem here, because this is a disaster what happened today. This is a big tragedy and a loss of life. And what you have as a result are people like this meathead, McMaster and others, coming and saying, oh yeah, we should, you know, go to war. We should start the war again. We should stay. Like, no, that's not the lesson that should be taken from this. No. So you have people who are capitalizing off of this for war. I mean, this is disgusting, no? So, I mean, just to give you an example, I mean, this is just vile, honestly. I don't know who this moron is, but look at what this guy is saying over here. Oh, is it gone? I think his tweet was deleted. I'm going to read you a screenshot of it anyway, so you can just have an idea, yeah? So this guy posted this, I think, a little bit earlier. And he said this. I think I don't know who this guy is, but it went viral, right? And on Twitter, he's saying, for every American who is killed, a city in Afghanistan should be wiped off the face of the earth. I mean, this is just vile, honestly. I don't know what kind of, sane person would say such a thing. And so, you know, this is ridiculous. And you have lots of people who are saying things similar to this, you know. And so I just want to read you this response above from Spencer Ackerman. He says, as it happens, the United States wiped 3 Afghan villages off the face of the earth in 2010. They were called Tariq Kolash, Khosrow Sofia, and Lower Babur. These are the details of a 20-year war that don't get remembered, let alone discussed. This barbarism was not hypothetical, it was fact. Right? And so, I mean, this is really vile, some really vile stuff. And you know what's crazy is that you have a lot of headlines, and not just a lot of people, but a lot of headlines in the mainstream media that only seem to mention the Marines. Not all of them, but a lot of them, and I can show you some many examples here. So, you know, look at this one. This is from, look, Kabul airport attack kills 60 Afghans, 13 U.S. troops. Okay, here it mentions the Afghans. Look at the next one. This is from Al Jazeera. 13 U.S. military personnel killed in bomb attacks at Kabul airport. So it's just the U.S. military personnel. Here's New York Times. At least 13 U.S. troops among masses. Okay? Here's Financial Times. At least 13 U.S. troops among those. Okay? Hold on, I'm trying to refresh this one. So you have various headlines over here saying that, you have U.S. troops that were killed and all this stuff. And I mean, even Bernie Sanders. Yes, this is what I wanted to show you. So even Bernie Sanders over here, look at what Bernie says. Bernie says, today we mourn the loss of the members of the U.S. military killed at Kabul airport. These soldiers played an extraordinary role in helping to evacuate over 80,000 people, Americans and Afghans. Their bravery and sacrifice will not be forgotten. Yeah, okay, I mean, sure, evacuating people is noble, but, you know, there are 60 Afghans who died, 100 wounded. You don't think it's good to mourn them as well? I don't know. They're not also worth remembering. Like, what does that even mean? You know, and the same thing here. This is MSNBC. 13 U.S. service members were killed and 18 wounded. Yeah, well, yeah, what about the Afghans? You know, it's their fucking country. I don't get this mentality. I mean, I do get it. I do get it, because what they're doing is they're saying, what they're doing is they're implying that, you know, the lives of Marines are worth more. That's what they're implying. And I think it's meant to stir outrage and, stir up emotions. It's also kind of like, excuse me, it's also kind of like 9/11, You had 3,000 people who were tragically killed. But you look at the war on terror, which was started as a result of 9/11, and it's 10, I don't even know how many times more, right? I mean, just, if we just look at Iraq, you have about a million people killed, right? As a result of the invasion, Al-Qaeda, ISIS, it's about 1 million people. So how many times more that is. And then you have millions of refugees. You have 3 million refugees that went to Syria, just to Syria, never mind the others, right? Afghanistan, 50,000 Afghan civilians killed. That's the conservative estimate. That's a conservative one. It's more like 250,000, right? So, I mean, people, they every year they commemorate 9/11. And yes, I mean, you should. It's a tragic day. Yeah, but what about the rest of the victims? They should be commemorated too, because you have much more and many more countries and lives and homes and devastated because of this. 20 years now, 20 fucking years. As a result of that, it was capitalized off of, they stole that tragedy and used it to start wars, right? And killed other innocent people. So there's an imbalance here. Do you know what I'm saying? It's like, it's one thing to talk about both, but they're not. They're always stressing the importance of Westerners because, it's like the Afghans, they're just statistics now, I'm sorry, but that's what it is. I know some people don't see it. No, this is what they're doing in the headlines and others. And, if you just look over here, you go on Twitter and type Marines. I mean, just look at this, man. Come on. God bless our Marines. Okay. And here's the, we're praying for the families of the fallen Marines and Afghan allies, whoever that is. I mean, you could just say Afghans. I mean, do the people who died have to be allies necessarily? Here, 12 Marines, right? U.S. Marines. It's just, they're all about the Marines. Is that it? Why I have an issue with this? It's not because of Marines or whether there was paratroopers. No. The point here that I'm trying to make is that this war was 20 years long. 20 years. How many days is that? You do the math. Every single one of those days, someone was being killed or injured or having their home destroyed or living as a refugee. There was suffering. Do you understand? There was either death or there was suffering. Every single day for those 20 years. Someone was paying for this war. In paying, I don't mean with money. I mean with their physical health, mental health, their material wealth. Someone was losing because of this war, suffering. Yes? And just to give you an idea how unbalanced the coverage is, right? Look at this over here from, I think it's Li Fang. Look what he said. Over 1,659 civilians in Afghanistan were killed from January to July this year. That's in the last 7 months. About half of whom were women and children. But there were no viral images, nothing to use to score political points, so virtually everyone in the media and Congress ignored. It's true. It's true. And that just to drive this point further home, I mean, it's so difficult to know what's actually happening that if you talk about it, you go to jail, right? I mean, just, again, I talk about Assange or Daniel Hale or Chelsea Manning. They went to jail for telling how many victims are actually dying. That was, you understand? That's how secret it is. We don't know. They keep it secret. So not only are they, not only is there unbalanced coverage, it's secret. You're not allowed to know because it's so much more and so much worse. So do you see the problem here? Right? And it's also this idea that, oh, well, because you see these words that are being used a lot. It's like, oh, there's sacrifice and so on. Okay, look, yes, okay, I understand. Working to evacuate civilians, sure, that's a very noble endeavor. The problem is they don't use it in just this context, do they? They don't use it just here. They say it all the time, right? And they say this about British troops. They say this, if you go and you read the Sun or BBC, you name it, they always call heroes. Yeah, but hold on, man. There's a difference between, fighting Nazis in World War II and then bombing another country and invading it for resources over lies. That's a big fucking difference. That's not heroic. That's heroic for, people who work as, you know, executives at Raytheon or Lockheed Martin or something. Yeah, you're heroes to them because you just gave them a new swimming pool or a new Cadillac or something, or a new Rolls Royce. Of course you're heroes to them. But, you know, this language, it's like they've kind of, you know. So, you know, they're just focusing on the Marines in a lot of the coverage. Yeah, but it's not just them, man. The Afghans died today. 60 of them died. And as we saw, 1,700 died in the last 7 months. I didn't even know about that. And I covered the war, right? I didn't even know about the 1,700. So this is how little we hear about it. They've become statistics. It's like, you know, whatever. No, it cannot be whatever. Because that's the whole fucking tragedy of the war, is that they've turned people into like they don't matter, you know? And it's just disgusting. So just let me bring this over here. Hold on. And by the way, I just want to point out another thing. I think this is worth mentioning. So Sharmeen posted this. She said, 22 American soldiers killed themselves today because of the media championed wars they didn't want to fight. But U.S. media only mentions 12 Marines. Tomorrow, another 22 U.S. soldiers will kill themselves. And the day after and after and after. Do you know what that is? She's referring to the male suicide epidemic, which you have in the U.S. And actually not just in the U.S., Britain as well, and the world over. But it's especially acute if you look at... it's especially acute and concentrated in Marines, for example, in armed forces, because they have PTSD, right? And the statistic she's referring to is accurate. You have around 22 per day who kill themselves because of PTSD and other various mental illnesses, you know, very much related to what they did in the armed forces, right? And again, that's another, like, they don't want to tell you about that or focus on that because, you know, you might hear like an article about it in passing once in a while, but they don't want to focus on that because, you know, that would show that the wars are bad, that you know, it would drive down recruitment. It's bad PR for the war machine. And the media's job is to celebrate, encourage recruitment, and, you know, bolster the war machine. So this goes, you know, they don't actually really care about Marines. They only refer to them when they die and try to romanticize them in battle so they can drive up recruitment and stuff. But when they're actually, you know, more of them dying because of the war, you know, the horrors that they've seen or had to, you know, experience or enact, whatever happened, they don't tell you about that one because that's bad PR. You understand? So when they can exploit and they can capitalize off of Marine deaths, they'll do it. Yeah? So I think that's also very disgusting and another way that the media are doing this. And, you know, I want to also maybe talk about the fact that the U.S., you know, they come in and they say, okay, we're going to fight terrorism. And not just the U.S., they got the U.K. to do it with them, of course, and, you know, Denmark, Germany, you name it. There's so many countries, right? The coalition of the willing. Although I'm not sure if it was called that way in Afghanistan, but certainly for Iraq, the coalition of the willing. In any case, NATO came to Afghanistan with what goal in mind? Well, they wanted to fight terrorism, right? That's the stated goal. And they wanted to get rid of the Taliban. Well, first of all, they wanted to get rid of Al-Qaeda, because they allegedly carried out the September 11th attacks, even though the hijackers are Saudi. So I don't know what they're doing in Afghanistan. But nevertheless, they said they want to go to Afghanistan, they want to get rid of bin Laden, and they want the Taliban because the Taliban won't give them bin Laden. The thing is, the Taliban offered them bin Laden. They said, we can give him to you. You just have to prove that he's guilty of you know, he's behind 9/11, which is the logical thing to do. Even when the US is trying to extradite Assange from the UK, they still have to go into the fucking court and prove that he did X, Y, and Z before the UK is like, okay, we'll hand him over to you. Do you understand? Even though it's a complete farce and they're doing it unjustly and lying, but they're still doing the process, even though it's a complete farce. Yes? So you can't expect you know, the Taliban in Afghanistan to just, like, you know, surrender 100% to the US. Oh, here, you can take whoever you ask us. No, what is that? That's ridiculous. So they're asking for the bare fucking minimum. It's just, did he, you know, if he did it, just show us and you can have him. Although, again, they didn't say you can have him directly. They said they'll hand him over to a third country, and then probably it would have been a country with an extradition treaty, etc. But you understand the point here. And Bush refused on multiple occasions. Bush turned this down. He was like, no. This is even after the bombing started. The bombing had already started. And the Taliban were like, listen, stop bombing us. You can have him. No, didn't want to. So what does that tell you? That tells you that they didn't actually care about getting bin Laden. They didn't actually care about fighting terrorism. They wanted to start a war because it was good for the money. It was good for the money. It was good for the fucking cash. This cash cow of 20 years and beyond that they started. Money is an understatement, right? There's resources as well to be exploited. So this shows you one thing. And my other point is that when we look at Al-Qaeda, who created Al-Qaeda, man? Come on, are we going to bullshit each other over here? Are we going to bury our heads in the sand and ignore history? Why should we do that? Why should we do that? We should look at history for what it is. In the 80s, 79, 89, the Mujahideen were financed by the CIA. And a lot of these people who went on to found Al-Qaeda, to join Al-Qaeda, they were part of the Mujahideen. So, the US is creating these threats and then it's claiming, oh shit, look, we have this big problem over here. Guess we're the only ones who can solve it. Okay, here we go. Let's make some money for the private, weapons industry and contractors. And, here's 20 years gone and hundreds of thousands of people killed. But hey, we defeated this threat. And then they can't even do that, right? So now they want to leave and all of a sudden you have this huge attack. How convenient. I mean, listen, man, if you were going to explain what a false flag is to someone, just as a textbook example of a false flag, this would be one. No? Like the day, well, not the day, it's the days, in the last couple of days. They're supposed to leave on the 31st in a few days. When they're on the cusp, on the verge of leaving, there's suddenly a massive attack where Marines are killed. And now you have people saying Biden should prolong the war. And as a matter of fact, it's not just people saying it. Let me show you something over here. Because according to Kyle Griffin on Twitter, President Biden says he's told the Pentagon to develop plans to strike ISIS-K assets, leadership, and facilities, whatever that means. Whatever that means, right? I mean, underneath you have someone saying, don't send in more troops. And you know what this reminds me of? I mean, this reminds me a bit of Syria, because when they were saying that, basically, just give me a second, sorry. What's important here to stress is that in Syria, for example, what did the US and NATO and UK say? They said they're going to go, even Jordan was in on it, right? They said they're going to go and bomb Syria just with limited airstrikes. Yes? So no ground troops. Obama said no ground troops, not going to invade Syria, but we will go and bomb ISIS and provide air support. Yeah, and it turns out, you know what they were doing? On the ground, you had Special Air Service, British SAS, right? Special Forces. You had American Special Forces. So they had troops on the ground. They just didn't tell you. They still had troops on the ground. Okay? So I don't know what this means. I don't know what this means. I'm being honest. I really don't know what this means. This thing about striking ISIS-K assets. Where are these assets? How many of them are there? I mean, obviously, just for operational security, I don't expect to actually get an answer before they do it, because that would warn them. But my point here is that you should be wary of such statements. Why? Because when they say that they're going to do something limited, well, we've seen what that is, right? In Libya, they did a limited NATO strike and NATO strikes, and they had a no-fly zone. Yeah, and look at Libya now. It's a fucking failed state. Libya's destroyed. Till now, we're in 2021. This is almost 10 years ago. Libya has not recovered from these limited strikes. Syria, as I said, they lied. They have ground troops there. Syria's also not recovered yet. And even when Trump said we're withdrawing, he fucking lied. He just moved the troops to the east, to Hasake, Deir ez-Zor. They're occupying the oil. 90% of Syria's oil is under U.S. Military control. 90%. Now, of course, Syria, in the grand scheme of things, is not a large exporter of oil compared to other countries. But for Syria's revenue, it's a lot, right? So my point is, I don't know what this means. It's very abstract, and I think it's that way on purpose. So, even if perhaps they don't prolong the war in the classical sense, you don't know what's going to happen. The CIA are staying there, as William Burns said, the head of the CIA, in April. And as we know, the CIA were the first ones in Afghanistan in 2001 in October. They were the first ones in before the Marines and the cavalry came. We don't know if they're leaving. Apparently they're not. And now Biden is saying he's going to... It doesn't end, right? It just never ends. And this is the very essence of the war on terror. The war on terror has always been a racket. It is designed this way. When you go and you read the AUMF of 2001, the authorization for the use of military force, where everyone in Congress voted for it except Barbara Lee, if I recall correctly. Congress gave the US president, and this is what's funny, right? It doesn't even specify which president, which is why 4 presidents have been using it. Nice, right? The AUMF of 2001 doesn't even specify what country it's for. It doesn't even say Afghanistan. It doesn't even say Taliban. It doesn't even say Al-Qaeda. It just says, it authorizes the US president to go and attack the people who attacked the US on 9/11 and those who helped them, right? I've shown it to you many times. It's a page and a half. And so this is what the war on terror has been from day one. It's an abstract, undefinable enemy, right? And they will always come up with new threats, right? Like I told you, first it's Al-Qaeda, then it's also the Taliban at the same time, and then it's Al-Qaeda in Iraq, the insurgency, and then it's all of a sudden it's Al-Qaeda in Syria, and then it's not all rebels, it's just some rebels, we're okay with some jihadists, but not those jihadists, and then it's Daesh, ISIS, and then now it's ISIS-K. It's never ending. It's never ending. This war is not going to stop. These wars are not going to stop until that fucking AUMF is torn in half, this piece of death toilet paper. And obviously, it's not just going to end with that. They'll come up with another one. But this is only going to end when the imperialism ends. Do you understand? And this is just really heartbreaking what's happening. There's just no peace for the Afghans, right? I mean, I think this is very degrading after having their country destroyed for 20 years, that they have to beg to go as refugees. I mean, just think of this, because, the U.S., no Afghans invited the U.S. The U.S. just fucking came out of helicopters with guns and tanks and just shot at people, right? They just came. They just invaded. And then these same countries, the US, the UK, what do? They turn around and they say, after they've invaded your country, they're like, no, you can't come into ours as a refugee. Nope, sorry. Oh, really? Oh, now you have borders and you have immigration. Is that so? You didn't care about Afghanistan's borders and sovereignty and immigration when you invaded it? Same for Iraq, same for Syria, same for Libya. Did you give a shit? Like, this is the highest form of hypocrisy, right? Like, right now they're saying, Spain can have a few refugees, a few thousand, and we'll give a few thousand refugees over here. Like as if they're garbage or something, right? Like, no, you have them, you take them. What the fuck? You destroyed their country. Why do you think so many people are trying to leave the country? If so many people are trying to leave the country, you obviously didn't better it, did you? You obviously did something wrong, right? Or else why would so many people be trying to leave? Obviously, this is not just down to the war in Afghanistan. I mean, if you just look at centuries of colonialism, why do you have developed countries, rich countries, and then countries that are poor and developing? It's not just because of the last 20 years of the war on terror. This is centuries of slavery, plundering, theft. It adds up. And not even just theft of resources, theft of fucking human beings. Slavery. They would literally steal people to bring them over, wherever it was, the triangle trade, and use human beings, right, as resources to build up their wealth. I mean, this is disgusting. So you cannot take this out of the equation and act like, it doesn't affect. No, it affects. It affects very much. And it's, these results are still felt today. And so be very wary of what's happening right now with the CIA, with these national security ghouls, what's his name? McMaster, H.R. McMaster coming on and, saying that, oh, it's ISIS and the Taliban. Yeah, okay. Next they're gonna say it's Osama bin Laden himself who did the attack, right? Like, we don't know, man. We don't know. The problem is that even if it'd be one thing if you have a bullshitter who's coming on the news and he's just talking crap, and then they would push back and they'd be like, well, hold on, how are you saying this? ISIS and the Taliban are enemies. They're not working together. No. They're just like, oh, Mr. Bullshitter, here, please have the mic. The floor is yours. And they just let him brainwash everyone. And the problem is that when you do this on a massive, when you do this on a massive scale, when you have several bullshitters, several liars, several merchants of death who work for the weapons industry going on all the networks, and all the networks repeat their lies, which is what you had in the lead up to Afghanistan, the lead up to Iraq, the lead up to Syria, you know, this weapons industry media complex. When you have that, this is how you get these wars, because there is no fourth estate. You don't have any actual press corps to hold these people to account, to question them, to scrutinize them. No, it's just like, oh, you want to talk shit? Here's the mic. And this is how they warmonger people. This is how they play with people's emotions. They bullshit them. This is how people become ignorant, by watching television, by watching Western corporate media. So my conclusion here, I'd say, is be very wary of what they say, and who they blame, right? And I mean, this is just tragic. You know, it's very tragic. What really sticks out to me is that they knew this was going to happen. They warned their own citizens, but they didn't do anything to actually barricade, to prevent. Look, trust me, man, you have the Army Corps of Engineers, and you don't even need the Army Corps of Engineers. You have some basic protocols. You can set up some barricades, checkpoints. You can limit. You can limit the potential damage. But I as far as I'm aware, everyone who is seeing the airport, everyone who's, we had someone, a colleague of mine on RT reporting from Kabul, today was just like every other day in the last days. It was just packed as usual. There was nothing special, even though they knew there was a threat. I don't know what this is. Is it carelessness? Is it on purpose? I don't know. But it's very tragic. It's very sad. And we have to be very careful of the warmongers and the national security ghouls and the weapons merchants who try to blame this on, whoever it is, just to start wars. And I'm very interested. I'm very keen to find out what this exactly means when Biden says he's going to, bomb assets belonging to ISIS-K. What is that? What is that? Anyway,